Do you like mysteries? How about clean mysteries with a Sherlockian feel? Hi, I'm Clay Boutwell, the author of the Agora Mysteries. What are the Agora Mysteries? Well, allow me to set the stage. It is late October 1889. Carl Brooke, a scholar of ancient and Near Eastern languages, spends his twilight years chronicling his past adventures as a leading member of the Agora Society, a group dedicated to the betterment of man. Sounds interesting? Well, I hope you're nodding and saying yes, and if you are, scroll down and choose your favorite online bookstore now and try out a sample. I hope you will like the Agora Mysteries, and if you do, please email me anytime. I'd love to hear from you. My email address is clay@clayboutwell.com. And if you have a minute more, here is the first chapter of my first Agora Mystery, 2 Tocks Before Midnight.
Chapter 1. October 24th, 1889. Carl Brooke, Boston. I have never been fond of sentimental ramblings, so I will keep this short. Indeed, were it not for the insistence of my friends, I would soon let the matter slip away with the sands of time. But repeated pleas from the curious and the morbid alike compel me to share with you the strange affair of October 24th, 1859. I cannot say with certitude the events of this date occurred exactly as I remember them. As time passes, so do the minute and myriad details. Rough edges are made smooth, and the inevitable romanticizing of the past is liable to play havoc with true fact. Still, as I am a Christian and an honest man, what follows is as accurate as my fallible mind can relate. Nearly 20 years separate us from those days, and that night in particular. I, alone, so I am told, am survived out of the lot of us. Before I begin to describe the events of that night, I think it important to share a little more about our group. We were the Agora Society, an open marketplace to foster ideas for the betterment of man. That was the aim. The structure, however, was modeled after Dr. Franklin's Junto Society. In a show of hubris that even today causes me to shudder with embarrassment, our charter set forth the goal of leaving to the world a greater legacy than that of the good doctor. Indeed, we had the mind to compete with the man who took lightning from the sky and the scepter from the tyrant's hand, as Turgot put it. He surely laughs at my friends in the hereafter. I fear there are times when I hear his laughter echoing in my dreams, beckoning for me to come. I do not think it wrong, however, to recollect our accomplishments, as dim as they may be when held up to Dr. Franklin's light. During the years of our club's existence, we established a freemen's society which secured the release of 136 slaves. We also ensured these men and women were taught a trade and their letters. It is of considerable pride to report nearly all of them transitioned well after the war between the states. Indeed, several families prospered. To this day, I have no greater joy than to receive a letter or a visit from a member of one of those families. Another source of pride came when the society financed the repairing of the dam in Clarksville, which was completed a mere month before the Great Flood of '56. Over the years, we were involved with building libraries, windmills, schoolhouses, and churches. It is also true that our services were used on a number of occasions by the police, as this letter will attest. Though small, we were well connected and able, by merit of our collective talents, to be of some value to law enforcement. In short, our efforts saved the lives of hundreds of mortal and immortal souls. However, again remembering our foolish goal, Dr. Franklin's invention of the simple lightning rod alone has surely saved millions. Our society, the Agora Society, had a dozen members at its zenith. Each brought to the group his individual talents and ambitions. Mine lay in ancient Near Eastern languages. To give a brief sampling of the others pertinent to our discussion, my dear friend, Dr. Christopher Harding, an expert in papyrus, cuneiform, hieroglyphics, and other writing methods of antiquity, led the initial discussion of the matter. Mr. Thomas Phillips, knowledgeable in ancient warfare and weaponry, could always be heard quoting some obscure Greek or Roman philosopher. And, of course, Mr. Charles Tocks could converse in 13 languages and read 5 more. Charles Tocks and Thomas Phillips are of special interest to our story. The weekly meetings were held every Monday evening at precisely 6 of the clock. If someone was absent or tardy, he was made to do community service. This usually meant clearing the streets of horse manure. The delights of such an occupation was a great incentive to arrive on time, and it was a rare occasion when one of us failed to do so. Charles Tocks joined our august group a few years before the events of that dreadful night. I should note, as a matter of protocol, we referred to each other by our first names, no matter our age or status outside the Agora. I distinctly remember Charles's introduction the first evening he appeared before our group. I relate it now because it accurately illustrates his dry humor and the breadth of his academic knowledge. "My name is Charles," he said, pausing to allow his eyes to greet each of us. "That can't be helped, but I always intended to marry royalty to avoid being churlish." Only a few of us caught the etymological jesting. Having a name, Carl, that shares the same cognate as Charles, namely churl, I was one of them. Churl, as you know, came to mean the opposite of nobility, a rude man somewhat above a peasant. Despite his poor taste in arcane humor, Charles's broad knowledge and experience soon propelled him to something of an elder position among us, a natural state of affairs, since the majority of us were more than 2 decades his junior. In the years since these events, many people have asked me if we suspected anything unusual about him from the beginning. In retrospect, he could be willing to compromise his principles to achieve his aims. He had demonstrated this vice in small ways over the years we knew him, but so subtle and inconsequential were these incidents, no one made mention of them in complaint. None of us could have anticipated his spectacular downfall. He arrived suddenly, and, one winter morning, left just as suddenly, and without telling anyone. As I have already attested, missing even a single meeting was heavily discouraged. This transgression was doubly shocking considering how integral he had made himself to the club. On the 3rd meeting after his extended absence, we decided a party should be sent to learn what had become of him. The talk of discipline from the week before turned to genuine concern. I was not among those chosen to join the search party, but I did receive the report. Charles's lodgings, the address he gave in the society's records, was an abandoned slaughterhouse. As it turned out, no member had visited Charles outside club meetings during the entire time he had been with us. Being a band of honorable men, we took our members' word as fact. This trust, unfortunately, allowed opportunity for abusers. But the mystery had only begun. Winter turned to spring, and spring to summer. It is difficult to overstate our total and utter amazement when, a full 6 months after his disappearance, Charles Tocks quietly walked through the doors of the Agora Society once more. Bearded and dirty, he wore a tattered frock coat and carried a lantern that cast a circle of yellow light, illuminating his features. He looked churlish, to say the least. While not against club rules, facial hair was a rarity among us. Only one of us, Thomas Phillips, had a neatly trimmed mustache. The rest of us, during those days, were clean-shaven, and therefore seeing Charles with an abundance of facial hair was doubly shocking. With him stood a large, similarly dressed man in dark clothing, carrying a leather case with a large brass buckle. A hushed pause descended as we all turned and stared at the strange sight.
I hope you enjoyed the first chapter of Two Talks Before Midnight. If so, finish this story by clicking any of the links below. Thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.